Hi friends! In this video and on my channel, I tell incredibly interesting stories. If not difficult to support this video with a like and comment. Enjoy watching.
2059 AD. Nuclear radiation has engulfed the entire globe. The internet, technology, and artwork perished in the nuclear ash. Knowledge and information that was useful in a past life was useless. The streets of abandoned cities and metropolises were filled with mutant animals, who did nothing but prey on the survivors. The time of human rule on this planet is over. In one of the ruined megacities, from the looks of it resembling once huge and alive Tokyo, a pack of mutant dogs hunted the surviving boy. From the mouths of these dogs emitted a bright green light reminiscent of radioactive substances. Fortunately, our hero is not the first time to face such a situation. He knew that he was being hunted for 3 days and 3 nights. He was ready for this encounter. He had a huge cheek-to-cheek scar on his face, which he had received in another battle for his life. Even though he hadn't slept or eaten in over 3 days, he was ready to fight for his life with all his might. In such a harsh world, he couldn't survive without his faithful friend, his knife. The mutant dogs, blinded by their rage over the mutation, trotted toward the guy just at the sniff of him. Taking all his courage and strength with screams, the guy rushed at the vicious dogs. The radiation had also mutated him, but not in such a strong form. His eyes became bloodshot and began to glow like car headlights. Having entered the fight with a whole pack of mutants, the guy first stabbed the most insolent dog with his knife. As he struck, he felt a wild rage within him. But this time, something was wrong. He felt a hellish pain and never felt before. He thought it was the end. His scream could be heard 1,000 miles away. Suddenly, lightning struck from the sky. It was so bright it lit up the entire ruined city. It is impossible to even understand what happened as he woke up in the midst of the thick green grass in the body of a small boy. He jumped up and started screaming and waving his arms, scattering the grass around him, shouting, "You bitch! Get off me!" "I don't understand." He looked around. His face showed genuine surprise. There were no more ruined buildings and roads, only a beautiful and dense forest. With delight, he asks himself, where did they go? Where am I even? A moment later, he came to himself. Looking at his hands, he shouted, "My hands! And my body, have they gotten smaller?" Out of confusion, he began to panic, but as soon as he touched his face, his consternation peaked and he whispered, "Even my face?" Trying to find a way out, he ran for a long time through the forest, when suddenly, he came across huge mountain ranges. Seeing such scenery, he wondered. Aquamarine had long ago lost its grassy fields and forests, even its blue and clear skies. It's just history. Perhaps I have traveled to another planet. As he stood looking around trying to figure out where he was, something stirred in the bushes behind him. But his reflexes did not leave him. In a flash, he reacted and shouted, "Is there someone here?" Getting ready for another fight, he caught himself thinking, on Aquamarine, to get what little resources were left, people were constantly killing each other. I wonder how things are for people on this planet. Sensing danger approaching, he grabbed a small stone that lay beside him. He was ready to fight for his life once again. Realizing that this time his enemy would most likely be a human, he thought, a human heart could be much scarier than a mutant heart. In the year he'd spent in Apocalypse, his reflexes and senses had reached a new level that no human had ever dreamed of. Despite the strong wind, he could hear where the sound was coming from in no time. As soon as he pinpointed the exact location of the source of the sound, he immediately ran there, realizing that if he didn't, it was his. When he came to the source of the sound, he froze like a statue. He couldn't move his fingers, so deep was his surprise. In a shaky voice, he said, "This is..." In front of him were 2 warriors who stood on the water as if by magic. One of them said with sincere hatred, "You are an ancestor of the demonic blood. Today, I, the perfect Hao Xuan, will destroy your body and destroy your soul." From the look of this man, it was obvious that he was serious. As a result of him not being embarrassed in any way by these words, only sighing heavily, he reluctantly answered him. "We are both cultivators of the 3rd stage of tribulation. How can you say that I won't be the one to send you to your grave?" Hao Shen didn't care about his opinion, and without even listening to him, he dashed into the fight. He was completely confident in his superiority over him. Wrapped up in his power of confidence, he shouted at him, "You talk too much for a dead man!" Unable to endure such insolence, the demonic blood ancestor was ready to give up the fight. His face was exceptionally angry. Their battle was so fierce and merciless that the laws of physics ceased to apply around them. Their blows sent pillars of water rising all the way to the tops of the mountains. Strike after strike, Hao Xuan felt his superiority. He threw his opponent on his back, and here comes the decisive blow that can end everything. Watching their battle, our hero was surprised to think that these were not the same cultivators that the elders had told their stories about. Cold sweat began to appear on his face from fear. He finally realizes where he has come to. This is the world of cultivators. Remembering all the stories of the elders, he realizes that here you can cultivate Dao and achieve immortality. The battle between the two cultivation masters was still going on. With each passing second, the intrigue was growing more and more. Would Hao Xuan be able to defeat the evil cultivator? Gathering all the strength in his fist, Hao Xuan strikes a blow of incredible strength, causing the stones weighing 3 tons to fly away like dust particles. From such a blow, there was naturally a blast wave that knocked our hero down. When the smell of fried food hit him, he realized he shouldn't be here. He ran as fast as if he was going to win the Olympics in running. As he ran, he remembered what the elders had told him. Really, these cultivators can kill me with a wave of their hand if they don't like me. He ran all day through a dense forest. Suddenly, a surprisingly luxurious house appeared in front of him. When he saw it, he shouted with relief, "There is a house ahead!" Exhausted by his marathon, he stumbled back to the house and began to think about his plans of action. Hiding along the wall, he began to peer around the corner to avoid getting caught. Even if he was in another world, he had no confidence that people in this world were the same as at home. Getting close to the entrance of the house, he slowly began to open the doors. All the while, he thought, I also can't say with certainty that there are no vicious oriental creatures like the mutant beasts from my previous life here. I need to be careful. As soon as he crossed the threshold, he noticed a dilapidated building that looked like a temple. Surprised at what he saw, he involuntarily blurted out, "It turns out this place was a temple. I wonder if there are people here." There was a monk standing in one of the doorways with a cold aura. The monk coughed softly so as not to frighten the boy. When he heard it, the hero was wary. He didn't know whether to wait for the battle or for dinner. Stepping into the light, the monk revealed his identity. He was a gray-haired old man with a thick and long beard, a light gray robe hanging from his shoulders. Bad video of the monk asking, "May I know who has come?" Sensing danger, the boy reached for his knife. It was a reflex he developed over the years in the apocalypse. But when he couldn't find anything, he remembered that he no longer had a knife. But the old man didn't make it clear, whether it was because of his poor eyesight or because he wasn't afraid of him. Looking at him better, he thought, outside, 2 cultivators are fighting vigorously. This old man is so calm. Could he be one of those hidden experts from the elders' stories? If this is true, I have the opportunity to become this expert's apprentice, meaning in this cultivator-infested world, I will have someone to rely on. I will no longer have to constantly run and hide, eating dirt and scraps to survive. Kneeling before the elder and bowing to him, the lad pleads with him. "Elder, you must be an immortal cultivator from the legends. Please accept me as your disciple." Looking at the boy, the monk felt sorry for him. Taking a closer look at him, the monk thought, someone's child? He seems to be only 7 or 8 years old, and a cultivator? Did he watch too much TV or something? A little while later, the elder asks him, "Where is your family?" Without thinking for a second, the boy shouts out, "I am an orphan." The monk can't leave this guy on the street and invites him inside. While they were talking, the light inside the temple disappeared. Going inside, the monk thinks, the lights are out again. Well, it's not such a big problem since it's almost night and it won't be so hot. At this moment, confidence appeared on the guy's face. He thought, the energy emitted by this expert has weakened. It looks like he won't kill me now. Won't he take me on as an apprentice? Knowing that he hadn't fully explored this world, he wasn't sure if he was safer than Aquamarine or not. He decided that he would try his best because he wouldn't last a day in this childish body without ability. The decision has been made. Biaz's forehead apole, he shouts, "I want to learn your martial art. In exchange, I can do anything for you. I hope the elder will accept my sincerity." The elder was surprised by this behavior. The old man sighs heavily and says, "I like to be carefree and unencumbered by the world. However, seeing your sincerity, meeting you here today could be considered fate. So I think I'll teach you a couple of moves." The boy was immensely pleased that the wise man had agreed to teach him his craft. Joyfully, he shouted out, "Thank you, master. I won't let you down." Naturally, the old man was no martial artist. But he thought it was getting dark, so it wasn't safe to send him away. I can just keep an eye on him until his parents come for him. Slowly, they both walk to the temple. The elder asks him with a heavy heart, "What is your name, child?" The boy, overjoyed, shouts, "My name is Liu Mo." The next day, early in the morning, they began their lessons. The first of which was meditation. Many people underestimate the effect of meditation on the body and soul, so they practiced for a month. In another lesson, a guy asks the elder, "Master, I've been practicing this position for over a month now. When will you teach me some skills?" Stressed by his impatience, the master says to him, "Again this question?" The elder started to get nervous. Drops of cold sweat appeared on his face. He was not capable of doing this. So, what could he teach him? Trying to justify himself, he said, "I have already told you that only when you have mastered the breathing technique and collected your first supply of spiritual qi, I will teach you the technique." Trying to persuade him to continue learning the technique, the guy was collecting his spiritual qi in one hand. It was so bright that even in the middle of a white day, it was interrupting the light of the sun. The guy says, "But teacher, I have already mastered the breathing technique and collected my first stream of spiritual qi. In addition, even without the breathing technique, I can feel how my strength has increased." When the elder saw how the man had accumulated spiritual energy, he was dumbfounded and didn't understand how it was possible. He simply taught him health-improving techniques he had seen on the internet. The monk had studied these techniques all his life, but he couldn't do anything. He couldn't understand how he could do it. 10 years later, a man stood on a lonely rock. He had come to visit the grave of his friend and teacher. On the tombstone was written, "Here rests the perfect Xuanyang." This lonely man turned out to be a man who had come to honor his deceased teacher. Bowing, showing respect, he whispered, "Teacher, after your passing 2 years later, your student practiced diligently every day. As of today, I have reached the innate stage. I will descend from the mountain to continue training. I am here to pay my respects, for the last time, Master." As he looked at his palm, Luo Okotilas had warm memories of his teacher. On his thumb was a large green ring that his teacher had given him. Leaving last, Liu Mo said, "You told me that this jade ring is a very important item, left by the celestial immortal. Your disciple will take good care of it." Gathering his feelings into a fist, he was determined to descend the mountain and find the strongest expert. In front of his eyes, the battle from 10 years ago between the two cultivators still surfaced in front of his eyes. Liu Mo had firmly decided for himself that today he would come down from the mountain. He admitted to himself that, all in all, it is very scary to leave this place. Even his cultivation, innate stage cultivation, cannot guarantee his safety. And now the moment has come. Liu Mo leaves the mountain. At the moment of descent, he thinks, "If I want to live peacefully in this world of cultivators, my only way is to become an expert myself." 3 minutes into their journey, Luo stumbles upon a new and smooth highway, which apparently led to a town nearby. After entering the celestial city, Luo began to explore its surroundings. In his whole life, he could not remember such a city, stores, beautiful streets, and most importantly, no mutants. Walking into one of the buildings with a brightly colored sign, he finds himself in a computer club. On one of the screens, a little girl with a big tie who was flying on a ball and humming to herself. La 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 la. Suddenly, a huge fire phoenix swooped down on the girl. Its claws were like scalpels, so sharp they were. Fortunately, despite her appearance, this girl turned out to be one of the strongest warriors. Her special weapon was a magic blade. With a single swing of her blade, she left the phoenix in her wake. Her power knew no bounds. When Lu Mo saw this, he was speechless. The expression on his face was as if he had seen death with a scythe. Looking at this little girl, this neck, to be able to fly low on the ball, the most stringent cultivation requirements, is the formation of the foundation. If you want to maneuver it like this little girl, you need to be at least at the golden core stage. I was still playing in the mud when I was 6. This girl is already riding a ball, slaying demons. Liu Mo faced reality. Apparently, he was not prepared for it. Clutching his head, he shouted to the entire room, "This world is so terrifying. I was too reckless, coming down over the mountains with my pathetic innate stage cultivation." With his shouts of Liu Mo, he attracted the attention of a beautiful girl who worked in this computer club. She comes up to him and asks him, "Hey, little brother, you've been standing here for a while for food. Do you want to use our computers?" Hearing this, the lemon was confused and shyly asked her, "Computers?" Shyly Lumo, the cycle on the screen, asks the cute one, "Are there many experts like this little girl here?" The girl's eyes popped out of her forehead at what she heard. Smiling, this sweet, sweet girl happily says to him, "Oh, are you talking about the little fairy Nini? Like her, very much so. Our days people like her are everywhere." Hearing this, Lumo just came to a horror. He couldn't believe his ears. He begins to think that the world far from the mountain is full of experts. He must be careful not to offend anyone, or they will kill him, just like in those stories of the elders. A nervous smile appears on Lumo's face. The girl thinks he is glad, says, "In our club the prices are very democratic." After a little thought, Lumo says, "I can find anything I want? Then I would like to try it." The girl was glad that he dared. But before giving him a computer to use, she had to do some machinations. She asks him, "Can you show me your ID?" Lumo really liked this girl. He has fallen into the innermost window in her heart. Blushing a little, the girl thinks, "This little brother is a little slow, but he is so handsome. I just glanced at his address when I register him, and maybe I'll accidentally run into him later." When the Liu Mo heard her request, he was surprised a little. A look of miscommunication on his face counted on his face. In an unsure voice, he asks the girl for an identifier. What kind of identifier? Is it what every cultivator of this world has? When the girl heard that Liu Mo didn't have an identifier, she was very surprised, but still decided to ask again. "You don't have an identifier?" Liu Mo, thinking that he was some kind of wrong in this world, became very shy and answered her in an unsure voice, "Yes." The girl realized that she had embarrassed him with her questions and decided not to ask him anything more. The girl realized that she had embarrassed the man with her questions and decided not to ask him anything more. The girl wanted to create a more intimate environment, so she took the furthest room. When he arrives, she tells him, "This room is more private, so you can stay here. If someone comes looking for your ID later, be smart. Don't flaunt it and don't get me in trouble, okay?" Lumo, everything was very clear. Except for one thing, how to use the computer. When the girl heard Luo's question, she thought, "Really? Do you want to act out the 'I don't know how to use a computer' scene to get close to me?" A lustful smile appeared on the girl's face, taking it as a role play. She decided not to expose him. 10 minutes later, he was already surfing the internet, looking for the information he needed, but the net was aided by the same girl. The girl was happy to help Lumo, as he liked her very much. But there was no one to work besides her. Having shown and told the basics in favor of the computer, the girl was about to leave, gently touching his shoulder. She says, "Okay, now you should be able to use it yourself. Just call me if you need anything else." That startled him. Having gone through so much testing and measuring training, Lumo was sure he could handle some computer. Enthusiastically, he got down to business, shouting, "Okay, let's see what the cultivators can do." Typing in the search bar of his query, he was knocked out many websites. Each of them told amazing stories about the exploits of hundreds of cultivators. Seeing how many powerful cultivators he had found at his request, Liu Mo shouted in surprise at how many strong people there were in this world. When Liu Mo visited one of the websites, he found a video he was interested in. He clicked on play and started watching the video. He began to study the video. How did all these cultivators get such strength? Suddenly, one incredible cultivator caught his attention. His size and strength were astounding, and lightning was oozing out of his body. Taking everything at face value, he seriously listened to what the video said. The cultivator in the video, with fierce eyes with blue flames coming out of them, said, "Grief is only the beginning." After watching the video to the end, Lumo is horrified by the power of these cultivators, and says to himself, "Later, a congenital like me is nothing. If I keep running around like this, sooner or later I'll be sneezed to death by a real expert." Immersed in his thoughts, he stared at the screen and began to ponder. But what should I do? Go back and cultivate on the mountain again? But that would be too slow. These thoughts made him feel even sadder. He just felt like nothing. The thought of returning to the mountain he quickly dismissed. He had already made up his mind that he would leave the mountain. Suddenly he had an epiphany. That's right. The teacher is dead, but I can find a replacement for him. Since everyone was growing their cultivation successes online, he decided to find a master there. Earlier, Senior said that the TikTok app has a lot of research, and he decided to start there. Going into this app, he searched for the most diverse and powerful novice cultivators. There was a huge list of masters in front of him. Liu Mo was surprised that it only took him a minute to find the strongest cultivators. With delight, he shouted, "There are truly many powerful people here. There are even many people who are making their own opinions. This is so convenient." After thinking for a bit, he decided to record a video in which he was going to ask for some cultivation tips. He moved a little farther away so he could be seen better. But since it was the first time he'd ever made a video, he didn't know where to even start. Taking a deep breath, he calmed down and gathered his thoughts together. After a little thought, he already knew where to start his video. First, he would show what he could do himself. Concentrating, he began to cultivate. An unreal blue aura appeared around his hands. In this world, cultivators have incredible strength. And in order for them to at least pay him some attention, he decided to show off the strongest technique in his arsenal, the Heavenly Sword. With a sweep of his blade, he cut through time and space. His blade had incredible power and potential. Demonstrating his skills and abilities, he decided to concentrate his spiritual ki, turning it into crystals. With awe and excitement, he bowed to the camera, and with full confidence in his eyes said, "Dear experts, may I ask you to evaluate the flow of my ki and give me advice on how to improve it?" Thinking back over his entire life, he added, "Also, isn't it too late to start cultivating at the age of 8? Thinking that everyone in this world starts cultivating from diapers. And how much it was his first experience of making videos. He was very nervous. Will anyone watch his videos? And would they even give him a few tips? Out of the blue, he gets a notice. He received a message from one of the cultivation masters. It said, "Friend, I just got over grief. 8 years old is really a bit late to start cultivating, but I can give you a couple tips." Lumo didn't expect anyone to even pay attention to his video, let alone respond to it. In one of the huge skyscrapers, a room was set up for streamers. The preparations for the show were already at the finish line. And the manager of this project yells, "Dahlia, we're checking the internet. We're streaming in 10 minutes. In the hands of the gorgeous Dahlia was a phone with a TV show on it. But was it even a show? With disgust, she looks at the screen, says to herself, but 10 years ago, I loved watching this show. But if you look closely, whether it's the acting or the special effects, both are a little lacking." When she sees Dahlia watching the show, the assistant runs up to her and excitedly tells her, "Oh, you watched it too? I remember back in the day, we didn't have any computers, that you could draw all this stuff on. A lot of the special effects on that show were done in real life. It was a mega hit in its day." Dahlia, shocked because the girl was only 17 years old, asks her, "How do you know all this?" The girl, a little embarrassed, tells her, "I learned it from my elders. You browse TikTok." Dahlia comes across the video of one very popular blogger, 30th Hidun. His video was watched by the whole world. Seeing what video Dahlia was watching, the assistant couldn't contain her laughter and blurted out, "What the hell is this? He's being overpraised. Ha 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 ha." This reaction of the Dahlia girl was very embarrassed, and she instantly swiped the video. The next video she came across was Lumo's TikTok, in which he was showing off his cultivation skills and asking for advice. Upon seeing him, the girls were very much surprised, and at the same time shouted out, "Oh, this brother is quite handsome," watching his video. The girls were amazed at what quality special effects, just amazing. The sword looks like it's actually floating. They didn't know it wasn't special effects. Dahlia looked at it and couldn't believe it was special effects. But that doesn't happen in the real world, does it? After they finished watching his video, they heard him address the cultivation masters. When they heard that he started cultivating at the age of 8, they were shocked because in their world, everyone started cultivating much earlier. Dahlia, very intrigued by the video Lumo, she thought, "This kid's acting is also not bad." I even believed him for a moment. They don't even know who he is. After liking it, she decided to write a comment. So that's who the mysterious cultivator who wrote the Momo. After finishing all the preparations for her stream, the producer says, "Dahlia, the stream is about to start. You can come to the camera." As he gets to work, Dahlia gives his cell phone to the assistant. The assistant sees that Dahlia has answered him, and with a puzzled look on her face, she asks her, "You know how many hits this will get him, don't you?" Turning around, Dahlia winks at her assistant and tells her, "Help me keep an eye on him. I want to see if he has any more tricks up his sleeve." Let's go back to Lumo. When he saw Dahlia's comments, he was surprised and happy at the same time, because the expert had answered him. Thanks to Dahlia's comment, Lumo's video went viral. Millions of people started watching it, and everyone was shocked that Queen Dahlia herself responded to him. More and more people were learning about Lumo, all interested in one question: who is he? Comments started coming to his account by the dozens, then hundreds, and then thousands. Seeing the lemon, he was just shocked. He didn't expect so many people to respond. Seeing the amount of information he had to research, he realized he couldn't read them all. Video the whole front of work in front of him, gathering his wits. He decides to get down to business. Opening the comments, he begins to study them. When he reads the first comment, he gets very embarrassed. "They all write that I'm handsome," Lu Mo shouted in surprise. He was even more embarrassed and thought to himself, "Am I handsome? I guess I'll look good after I enter this world." All these compliments pleased him very much, for he had never heard compliments about himself before. However, reading the following comments, he saw that many people write about some special effects, he thought. "Do not yet speak for the flaws and shortcomings of my chi?" Liu Mo, being uneducated, had no idea what all these people were writing about. Reading the comments, he came across a comment by someone, handsome or not, he wrote, "Impossible. There are those who only started cultivating at 8? At 3, I had already mastered my spiritual ki. At 5, I had reached the hostile stage, and even then I was considered average in my generation." After reading this comment to the end, Lu Mo, horrified, his hair stood up. He shouted, "Spiritual figure 3-year-old, a congenital stage at 7? Against their backdrop, Lu Mo appeared to be a mere runt. Well, the hater didn't stop there. He started writing mean comments next. In the next one, he wrote, "Just give up. Looking at you, you're at least 17 to 18 years old. If this is all you've achieved in 10 years of cultivation, you're just pathetic." Liu Mo was very upset when he read this comment, realizing that he was just pathetic in front of them. He began to have doubts again. "I was too reckless, leaving the mountain so early. I hope someone can help me." In spite of everything, he started to read all the comments, and suddenly he came across a piece of advice. "The flow of your chi is too turbulent. It is a sign that your control over it is low. In order to improve your control, you need to feel your chi with your heart." To him, this advice seemed logical enough. He decided to listen to it. He decided to try to improve his control. As suddenly, a blue pillar of blue color rose from his body. This could only mean one thing, that his chi control had improved. Literally a moment later, his energy dissipated throughout the room. Joyful, he shouted out, "It worked! Expert advice is really effective." Literally a moment later, his energy dissipated throughout the room. When he saw the first results, he exclaimed joyfully, "The experts in this world are really real masters. Thanks to one piece of advice, I achieved a colossal result." On emotion, he decided to immediately read the advice further, and the first one he decided to start from was Princess Dahlia. Literally a moment later, his energy dissipated throughout the room. Going to her account, he saw that she was live streaming. Hoping that she was sharing her skills on it, he decided to check it out. Literally a moment later, his energy dissipated throughout the room. Opening her stream, he watched her cultivate. It seemed to him that there were no limits to her skill. Literally a moment later, his energy dissipated throughout the room. Her cultivation level was astounding. She could easily execute the most complicated techniques, but her crown and technique was Fire Phoenix. Literally a moment later, his energy dissipated throughout the room. After she finished demonstrating her capabilities, she said, "I am a velvet fairy Qing Xiu Guan, with the innate physique of a spiritual wind." From the height of her experience, she knew that the most important thing in cultivation was the innate talent that manifested from birth. Literally a moment later, his energy dissipated throughout the room. Her face read sincere kindness, but her words said otherwise. In her final speech, she said, "So, the best time to start cultivating is from the moment you are born. Over time, your body will be corrupted by the impurities of the mortal world. Over time, these impurities will begin to block your spiritual streams." Pondering her words, Lu Mo was horrified. He didn't know what to do next. After all, he had only started cultivating at the age of 8. Terrified, he shouted out, "If only I had only been reborn as an infant, then I would have at least reached the level of innate equilibrium." Lu Mo was at a loss. He didn't know what to do next. Suddenly the idea came to him to ask the fairy for advice. He wrote, "My body is already polluted with impurities. May I ask if there is a way to remedy my situation?" Velvet Fairy was the most famous cultivator on the internet. Every stream of her caused a stir among all the gamers of the world. However, today's stream broke all records. Even her producer was amazed by such results, because this stream got 15,000 views. After the stream is over, an assistant runs up to Dahlia and says to her, "Dahlia, this little brother asked you a question in the chat room. Ever since he showed up, the nation has gone into a frenzy. The number of people watching stream continues to grow. On their faces, you could read the genuine surprise. Hearing this made Dahlia very excited. Her thoughts crossed her mind. Curious. This guy is getting more and more into his role-playing. Okay, then I'll play with you. Seeing Lumo's comments, the Dahlia starts up stream again, specifically to answer his question. After a moment, she says, "You shouldn't worry too much about starting too late. In the history of cultivation, there are several examples of immortal masters who started their journey quite late. Han Li, who didn't start cultivating until his teenage years, was able to achieve incredible results through his diligence. Lastly, before she ended the stream, she gave him one last piece of advice. You should use spiritual ki to wash away the impurities within your body until you reach a physique as pure as jade. Then the progress in cultivation will reach unprecedented heights." After pondering her words, he realized that this could work. Without a moment's hesitation, he ran out of the gambling club to find a secluded spot and try this. Running out of the club, he began to pace around the night city looking for a secluded and quiet place where no one would disturb him.